Who is in charge of our state? That's a tricky question. Back in the day, before we had states or even a country, the King of Great Britain ran things over here. We had a revolutionary war to break from Great Britain and form our own country. While we were doing this, we decided against a monarchy, governments run by a king or queen. Instead, we wanted to try a democratic form of government. This was a pretty new idea at the time, so we had to make a lot of it up. This gave early Americans the chance to really think about how to build a fair and just government. So they wrote up a constitution that laid out the principles of this new government and set the guidelines for how our government should operate. The Constitution says that all the power in the country is divided equally between three branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. This simple recipe makes it so that government in the United States establishes order, protects the rights of individuals, and promotes the common good. It also ensures that one branch cannot have too much power, because the other branches serve as the checks and balances for our government. We really did not like the idea of being ruled by a king. So what does this mean for Ohio? It works like this. All the United States of America must follow the guidelines established by the U.S. Constitution. So each state has their own three branches of government, and each state has their own constitution describing how each branch should work. Unlike the founding fathers of the nation, the founding fathers of Ohio had to draft a constitution and send it to the people for its approval. This gives the citizens of Ohio control over the action of the government by putting some limits on its power. The Ohio Constitution gives the state's legislative power to the General Assembly, and it also says the General Assembly should have two chambers, the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Senate. The General Assembly meets at the State House in Columbus to write, debate, and pass the laws they think we need for our state, and also to approve tax and spending plans. Now, when the House of Representatives or the Senate thinks they have a good idea for a law, they've got to write a bill, and then that bill has to pass through both chambers of the General Assembly. So it seems like the legislative branch is basically in charge, right? Nope. Because even after the bill passes in the General Assembly, it's still not a law. First, it has to get approval from the executive branch. In Ohio, our executive branch is represented by the governor, but of course governors can't do everything themselves, so they have other departments to do all the work of the executive branch. Departments like the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Public Safety. The governor appoints the directors to the various departments, but there are other offices in the executive branch that are elected by the people. The Secretary of State, the Auditor, the Treasurer, and the Attorney General are all elected and help to run the executive branch with the governor. When a governor gets a new bill from the General Assembly, it's not a law until the governor signs it. If the governor doesn't think the bill would make for a good law and doesn't sign it, that's what's called a veto. Vetoing bills is one way the executive branch has power over the legislative branch. But wait, that's not the final word, because the legislative branch can override executive vetoes, basically declaring that enough of the General Assembly thinks the law should be on the books that it doesn't matter what the governor says. If that happens, or if the governor likes the bill and signs it, then we've got a new law in all of Ohio. Now it's up to the governor to enforce the law, setting policies and programs that will make sure the law is followed in every town, city, and county of the state. So now the legislature and the governor are in charge, right? Nope. Because here's the thing. The legislative branch can make the law, and the executive branch can enforce the law, but we need another branch of government to interpret and apply the law. That's the role of the judicial branch, a group of people we call judges. In the judicial branch, judges conduct trials and hearings to determine if laws have been broken, and to make sure people follow the steps required by other laws. Judges must also approve search warrants for police and other members of the executive branch to investigate possible crimes. It is the judge's responsibility to interpret the laws and review whether they are put into practice correctly. The judicial branch also assures that the other branches play by the rules the citizens granted them in the Ohio Constitution. That means that in some cases, judges can even rule that laws passed by the legislative branch and approved by the executive branch actually violate either the U.S. Constitution or the Ohio Constitution and must be struck down. So that's how power in our government is equally divided. No one branch, legislative, executive, or judicial, can do anything without the approval of the other two. This makes it so that no branch can take too much power, no branch can violate the rights of individuals, and no one can turn themselves into a king. And not only does each branch have power over the others, but all the people of Ohio have power over all three branches. That's because in our state, citizens over 18 can vote for governors, representatives, senators, and judges in free, fair, and open elections. Citizens can also use the vote to propose new state laws or even change the Constitution. So who is really in charge of our state? At the end of the day, you are. The takeaway is this: our government has its power divided or checked between its three branches, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. This not only shares the responsibility of running our democracy, but it also makes sure the citizens are protected and represented to the fullest extent possible.